Look, we might have the most dynamic running back in the NFL. There's not a guy who could put the shakes on you and break ankles, lower the shoulder and drop the boom on you, and still eat your defensive end's lunch. And they coming on passing downs like Bijan Robinson can do. He's a true 3-down back.
Leadership was a big thing that I wanted to work on. How I came across to the guys, for them to see how I work, use my voice a little bit more, continue to be more explosive, understand all defenses, watching other teams and the teams that we're going to play, doing it now, and especially like first 10 teams, and seeing like how my run track and my routes on linebackers and DBs.
But are you a different animal and the same beast?
What the does that mean?
I tell you what it mean. My running back is better than yours. He can run, he can catch. He destroyed defensive ends and linebackers on the blitz. You see him run a wheel around on deep coverage. Spin the magazine, disrespect my running back, and you say number 4. Again, my top 5 running backs in this order. Bijan, 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 and Bijan. And Bijan. Derrick Henry can't run a wheel route. Saquon got butterfingers. Jameer Gibbs can't pass block. Just step into the bird bath. Drake London's leap. Bralen Trice is fit with the defense. And why you should take a look at sleeper Nick Nash. What's going on, family? It's Simo to C. Mitchell. You checking out the Falcons Bird Bath on Point Game Official. First and foremost, I want to thank our subscribers and our consistent viewers. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date. And please don't hesitate to reach out in the comments and let me know what you think about what we're talking about. Let's get into it. In one of my recent videos, I was telling you guys how I felt like Pete Prisco actually snubbed Drake London by leaving him off of his top 100 list. And how I felt as though Drake London is one of the best receivers in the league. Now, Drake London didn't even get an honorable mention on the top 10 receiver list voted on by execs around the NFL, which is crazy. Well, recently, the NFL started releasing episodes of its top 100 list of players in the league, voted on by players of the league. Drake London actually made it to 97. Now, if you're a person who makes this list, you're in the top 5 or 6% of players in the league. So I think it's just an honor to even be mentioned on this list. And I don't think that Drake London or any of our players on the Falcons, for that matter, care where they're actually really ranked on this list, beyond just, competitive bragging rights with, peers in the league. But I do think that this is a little bit low for Drake London, and I understand why. The Falcons are a little bit unproven so far, and this is his first mention actually being on the list. There's a common misconception that Drake London doesn't get separation, but actually a little bit of a myth, which I'll actually get to in a second. Every time I look up, he's always open. First and foremost, he accomplishes this with great route running. Underneath Drake London eats all day. He's a big 6'4", 215-pound target.
When you see people at his size, his structure, you don't really see the route running.
One of the things I love most about Drake London is he finds ways to actually get uncovered in small pockets of zones. Now, because Drake London is such a good run after catch receiver, this actually helps him get open a lot more deep downfield because he's hard to tackle for even linebackers. You're worried about him eating underneath so often, getting open so much, and the threat that if he actually does catch a pass, he can outrun some of your guys behind you. You actually bite up on a lot of those plays that he has, and because he's such a good route runner, he's able to get separation deep. He's one of the top 5 receivers against man-to-man coverage in the league last year, according to PFF ranks. Now, Drake London isn't the fastest guy in the league, but he has definite sufficient speed to actually break one and take it to the house. If you look at his stats from last year, once Michael Penix took over, his yards per reception actually went up. He was in the 15 to 18 yards per reception range. I believe that undoubtedly having Kirk Cousins earlier in the year kind of hurt his average. Kirk at times was not able to actually get the ball out there deep enough where Drake London could actually run under it at times. I've even seen plays going back to when we had Mariota and Desmond Ridder where they just underthrew him a lot. I don't think that's going to be a problem moving forward with Penix at quarterback. Now, one of the most underrated parts of Drake London's game is that he's a good run blocker downfield and he loves being physical. Drake London is a guy who runs a full and complete route tree. There's not a play call in the playbook that he wouldn't be good at running. I expect Drake London to take an even bigger leap this year. I don't know what his stat line is going to be this year, but I do expect it to increase because I expect a pickup in his yards per reception, having a more gifted and talented quarterback like Michael Penix, who's also a student of the game, who's also a guy who doesn't stare down his receivers. Falcons were one of the best rushing attacks last year, and that's because we've got Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Having Bijan out there really sells the play action in ways that you can't imagine. On first down, you have no idea. It could be an inside run, it could be an outside run, screen, delayed route. It can be a deep wheel route. If I see any type of run action with Bijan, your first instinct is going to be to overcompensate for that. Either you're going to freeze up and try to see where he's going because you're afraid of his speed, or you're going to haul ass and try to make sure that you stop whatever run. You have to take those steps forward and respect that run because if you let Bijan get too far into the defensive backfield, he's gone. Last year, the Falcons with Kirk Cousins were one of the teams that ran the fewest amount of play action. And they started running play action once they got Michael Penix there. But Drake London did all the damage that he did with his production, with teams kind of knowing predictably what we were going to do whenever we had Kirk Cousins out there under quarterback. Having Michael Penix, on the other hand, being a much more mobile guy who can roll out and do naked boots, all type of other plays, Drake London's going to eat a lot more. Anywhere in the defensive backfield between 5 to 20 yards is a spot where Drake London's going to eat all day. You have speedy receivers like Darnell Mooney. You have guys like Kyle Pitts who can really get deep and hurt you. That just opens up things a lot more with Drake London underneath. But I don't know, you guys tell me in the comments what you think Drake London's stat line is going to be. Is he going to go over or under his career highs in receptions, yards, and touchdowns this year? Now, Drake London is so important to the Falcons because he plays a very specific role that pretty much nobody else on the team is able to play. Being able to run a full and complete route tree as our best receiver and also our biggest target, we pretty much haven't had anybody else that could fill that role, which is why I really like Nick Nash, our undrafted free agent wide receiver rookie coming out of San Jose State. 6'2", 208 pounds, and he led his conference in touchdowns, receptions, and yards last year. 1,382 receiving, 100 receptions, and 16 touchdowns last year. At 6'2" and 208, he's very similar to Drake London on tape. Now, I'm not saying he's Drake London at all, but I really like a lot what I've seen on his tape. Some people would say that he played at San Jose State. He didn't have the best competition, but I do want to point out, he played in the same conference as Ashton Denty, and nobody said anything about that with him. Now, one thing you can say about him is he's 25 years old, so he's a little bit older, and that's probably why he went undrafted. He's a 6-year guy coming out of there. He's a former quarterback, and I think that really helps him out as a receiver. Now, at San Jose State, they primarily played him in the slot, and I believe for the Falcons, he could easily take over that number, the receiving role for Ray McCloud. Ray's a guy who had about 600 yards last year, and I could see this kid actually hitting around 600 yards. When you look at his tape, he's not a burner, he's not the fastest guy, he's not the quickest guy. He's just a really tough and physical runner. When he runs his routes, he's a real physical guy. He actually could catch passes with receivers draped on him, and he actually gets really good separation as well, too. He's a guy that got deep quite often. I believe he gets his separation from anticipation and kind of timing out when he's actually going to hit his full speed burst. When you look at his tape, he actually runs a full and complete route tree, but not consistently, and I believe that that's something that he's going to need to definitely expand upon on the NFL. His hands are pretty good and pretty solid. I did see a couple times on tape where he had a couple concentration lapses, but for the most part, he's got pretty good hands. As far as his route running, I would say that he's above average. He's not great. He has some things that he definitely needs to work on, and I believe that if you pair him up with Drake London and pair him up with this coaching staff, they're going to get him coached up. I feel like being a former quarterback helps him kind of understand how to uncover a little bit better and helps him understand timings. He's a guy who has really good ball tracking skills. Once the ball goes in the air, he has a very high chance of coming down with it, and you got to love that type of athleticism out of this guy. Now, Nick Nash is a little bit raw with some of his route running, but I believe that he can be a consistent target underneath on a lot of our passes, as well as being another deep threat guy that can stretch the field for the Falcons, just opening up a lot more plays for a lot of our underneath things as well. And I believe he makes the Falcons' offense a lot more dangerous, just with the threat of some of the things he can do. One player that I saw him compared to was Christian Watson, up there with the Packers. And again, I'm not looking for Nick Nash to be a star #1 receiver, but being a big target can get you in 600 to 800 valuable yards receiving, and the offense is going to be huge for the Falcons this year. Another guy that I think you can look at, and again, I'm not saying he's this person, look at Cooper Kupp in his rookie year and his second and third year. At first, he was not the #1 receiver out there with the Rams. Sean McVay actually loves the slot a lot in this offense. That's where Zach Robinson came from. He's an understudy of Sean McVay, and they run the same exact offense. So the West Coast system, so I believe that this is a place where he can definitely thrive in. And again, if London goes down, we have a guy who has a little bit of the same quality. Of course, all this is going to be contingent upon what they do, what they put the pads on. For all we know, he could potentially not make the team this year. But I believe he's a lock for being able to potentially make the roster this year. Right now, I think we have maybe 8 or 9 receivers on our roster, and I believe the Falcons are probably going to carry 6 guys. Casey Washington is a guy that could potentially be out and not make the team this year. He hasn't really come into fruition of any of the hopes that the Falcons were working on with him as a project player. The Falcons drafted Bralen Trice last year in the 3rd round, but unfortunately, in the preseason, he had an ACL tear, and that derailed his season, and he didn't get to go through his rookie year. And according to team reports, him coming back during training camp is an actual realistic possibility. And I believe that he's a guy that can actually do well for us. When you look at Bralen Trice's tape, there's a lot to like about him. 6'3", 275 pounds as an edge rusher. So he's not a guy that you have to worry about getting pushed around. He's a very fundamentally sound player. He has a full and complete arsenal of pass rush moves. His rip is good. He's really great with his hands. He enacts the spin move, has a high motor, and he's primarily a power rusher.
So if I'm working power move, I'm gonna line up, I'm gonna hit you like this, boom, bang, and I'm off.
I don't care how big they are, how strong they are. If I get my hands in first, I win.
He gives nightmares to offensive tackles with his quick, short area speed, and that kind of keeps them off guard. Going against bigger offensive tackles and linemen is not really much of a problem for him. He's so strong that once he gets his hands on linemen, they have to really fight. He's able to just bench press 300-pounders, and it's not a problem for him. And he sheds blocks really fast and quick. He gets rid of guys really quick. Even if you want to double team him, he's really good at splitting double team. Two tight ends, he's coming off low and ripping through. Put an offensive tackle in a tight end, he's coming off and he's ripping through. It doesn't matter. Even as an edge defender against the run, his block shedding is so good. He's good at getting his hands on players fast, shedding blocks, getting rid of the player, and going and making the tackle. Fundamentally, he's going to get his hands on you first, and he's going to work you as an offensive defender, and he keeps coming all game. It doesn't matter. He's just relentless with everything that he does. If there's one weakness that he had, I would say he's a little stiff in his hips, and he doesn't quite have the bend that you want. Even when he does a good job of getting his hands on you, he has trouble getting around the corner and beating faster offensive tackles. That being said, he's able to set up a lot of a quickness off of his power rush because they're overcompensating. He's able to beat you to the inside or the outside sometimes. But there's only so many times that you can do the same trick. And I believe that the Falcons, with a lot of the other players that they have, can actually scheme up a few things to help him out with that as well, too. So how do I see Bralen Trice actually fitting into the Falcons defense? The Falcons have a lot of players who are tweeners or either hybrids of what they do. And we know that the Falcons want to be able to run a lot of different multiple fronts. Pretty much for the most part, I see Bralen Trice lining up as an outside edge defender in a 3-4. When you look at his college tape, he rarely played the edge from a three-point stance. I didn't see any tape of him playing from a three-point stance, but that doesn't mean that he can't do that with the Falcons. Now, if you look at Trice's draft projections, they had him predicted to be a true 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Falcons are going to do. To be honest with you, it's a little bit tricky trying to guesstimate what the Falcons are going to do exactly with this defense this year. They've said so many things that are kind of seemingly contradictory to each other. They said they want to find a spot for Jalen Walker on the edge, and they also said that they wanted him to be able to master the edge, but then they were going to do some interesting things with him on 3rd and 4th down. And then you look at Nate Ollie, for example. He says that with Brandon Dorless and with Zach Harrison, they want to be able to use those guys as their big ends, and they want to be able to get them one-on-one to destroy tight ends. What I like about Bralen Trice is I believe that with his skill set and his size, he can actually play as a traditional 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. To be honest with you, I could also see him playing as a 3-4 defensive end. Depending on how strong he is and how he does against guards, I wouldn't rule out him being able to do something in the B gaps even on some of those downs as well too. The Falcons haven't talked about it, but I wouldn't rule out seeing a NASCAR package. It was a defense implemented by Steve Spagnuolo with the New York Giants when they played against the Patriots in the Super Bowl. 4 true defensive ends or edge players on the line of scrimmage at one time. I wouldn't rule out a scenario where you have Leonard Floyd, Pierce, and Bralen Trice on the field at the same time, as well as another defensive end like maybe Jalen Walker or somebody else, or maybe Ruka Rororo. But the Falcons have a lot of versatile chess pieces that they can use this year. And I'm really excited to see what they can actually do with this defense. Now, Bralen Trice isn't a guy I think is going to be 7 or 8 sacks, but he's a guy that I think could be a great rotational piece, and he could probably give you 5 to 6 sacks each year. Just to be honest with you, it's a little bit of a fool's errand to try to truly predict what they're going to do before they get into camp, because they have so many young players, and they got to see how these guys mesh together well, and they got to build up chemistry and see who's good at what and who's not good at certain things and what their weaknesses are and how they can account for those. So you could draw up all these things, but you got to execute them. All right, guys, that's our show for today. If you love what we're doing, stay tuned. Hit that like and subscribe button below. C. Mitchell, Point Game Official, Falcons Bird Bath, checking out, baby. Peace.